Hey, so what's up? Yeah, I wanted to talk about immigration, specifically illegal immigration or undocumented immigration. I don't know what term people like to use. I guess it depends on what side of the political aisle they're on. I don't really want to get hung up on the terms. What we're talking about is people who come into this country, usually by crossing the southern border. They come across illegally and they are seeking work. I'm talking about those people. I'm not necessarily talking about refugees who are like, I'm here to escape the cartels or something like that. I'm talking about people specifically who come to America because they want to work. They want to have, the economic opportunities that this country presents. And, they're willing to do whatever job needs to be done, whether it be picking fruit or doing construction or whatever. Now, before we get into talking about immigration, I want to kind of start by talking about social democracy, social democrats. Now, social democracy is ascendant in the U.S. with the candidacy of Bernie Sanders capturing huge swaths of the youth vote. I think Bernie Sanders got more voters under 30 than all of the other candidates combined in the recent New Hampshire primary. So obviously, this up-and-coming generation is really more prone to embrace social democracy. Now, Bernie Sanders does not call himself a social democrat. He calls himself a democratic socialist, which democratic socialist means something totally different in Europe. But thanks to Bernie Sanders popularizing the term here, it's now kind of confused, where what Europeans think of as a democratic socialist and what we think of as a democratic socialist is different. What we think of as a democratic socialist, they would call a social democrat. So when I use the term social democrat in this video, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, even though that's not how he describes himself. And I'm also talking about some of these European social democratic parties. And so while social Democrats may be on the ascent in the U.S., in Europe, they've been in decline for, a couple of decades now. And why wouldn't they be? Because, most of the stuff they've championed has already been implemented. So they've got no bold new ideas to excite the populace of their relative. Obviously, it's different country to country. You can't just treat Europe like it's one homogenous thing. But, overall, social democracy has been in decline. Social democrat parties have been in decline. And it's because they've become kind of the centrists there. They've become kind of the centrists because they've pushed their societies enough to the left that they're now in the center. And, voters, may say that they want centrism. They may say that they want the preservation of the status quo. But at the end of the day, centrists are not passionate. They're not highly motivated. They're not the people who go out and knock on doors and make phone calls. No one fights that hard for the fucking status quo. People fight hard for, as Barack Obama used to fucking say every other sentence, change. People want change. It doesn't matter how well things are going. People want change. No one likes stagnation. And even the people who do like stagnation, they're not passionate about it. They're they just kind of sit around. Yep, things are all right. I guess we're good. I don't need to do nothing. They just kind of rest on their laurels. As a result of that, and as a result of some immigration conflicts and some cultural clashes and stuff like that, a lot of these right-wing parties in Europe have become kind of ascended. They're like, hey, society's gone too far to the left, especially on this immigration issue. And there's a lot of tensions there with Islam, Islamic people entering into these European countries, not becoming assimilated into that culture. And, then they say, hey, they get to the point where there's enough Muslims there and they say, hey, we don't respect the laws of this society. We want to be governed by Sharia law. And it's like, okay, well, why'd you come here then? Just stay in a country where Sharia law is already the fucking order of the day. Whatever. We don't need to get too far into that, at least not in this video. But we've seen these right-wing parties ascend. Like we see Boris Johnson in the UK, new prime minister. He promised to finally deliver on Brexit, which the people of the UK voted on, years ago. It was, and the will of the people hasn't been respected there. And it's a shame. I mean, I just want to say, I don't have strong feelings about Brexit. I don't live in the UK. It's not really, doesn't really affect me. So, I have no strong feelings on it one way or the other. I wasn't deeply involved in the debate around it or any of that stuff. But, the people voted for it. You live in a democratic society. And when I say a democratic society, I'm not talking about pure democracy. I'm talking about any society wherein the people are able to vote on representatives or able to vote on referendums or able to vote on propositions or whatever the fuck. I'm talking about any society that includes that component to any extent. So when you put it up for a vote, hey, should we do this Brexit thing or not? And the people say yes, then you fucking do that. You do that. You don't fucking hold it off for years and years. You don't try to have more and more votes on it. You do the will of the fucking people. Otherwise, what's the point? Don't even bother giving them the vote if you're not going to fucking respect the will of the people. So Boris Johnson promises, I'm going to finally deliver on Brexit. He won. Jeremy Corbyn, who was the leader of the Labour Party, lost pretty decisively. And Corbyn himself was described as weak, indecisive, and unpatriotic in polls that came out shortly after that election to kind of see, why did they vote this way? And a lot of people said, well, we just felt he's a weak, ineffectual leader. They said he was stuck in the past. Now, this poll was done by a conservative billionaire named Michael Ashcroft, or literally Lord Ashcroft. I'm so glad I live in a country where no one is called Lord, unless it's actually their name. But there's no one has that title here. I kind of like that about America. So you could take the whole poll with a grain of salt, and you could say, well, it's biased. But I mean, obviously, people did reject Corbyn. So I mean, it's a valid question to ask why. And it was because he was perceived as weak. He was perceived as wishy-washy. He was perceived as stuck in the past. To me, stuck in the past means you're stagnant. You don't have a revolutionary plan. You don't have any sort of radical change to sell the people. You don't have anything to actually excite voters to come out and vote for you. Whatever the results may have, whatever you think the reasons behind it might have been, though. Maybe you can argue, oh, well, I don't think Corbyn was weak. I think it was actually this thing that sunk him or that thing or whatever. There's plenty of, arguments that can be had about that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what you can't argue with is that Corbyn lost and Boris Johnson won. So that same year, though, let's look at Denmark. Because the Social Democrats actually won in Denmark. As Social Democrats all across Europe declined, in Denmark, they did well. They elected, and I'm going to butcher this name, and I'm very sorry. I don't know how to fucking say this. I don't. Mette Frederiksen. I'm pretty sure about the Frederiksen. I'm not so sure about the Mette. I don't know if maybe it's meat. Maybe it's pronounced. I don't know. I don't fucking know, okay? And she's the country's youngest ever prime minister. She's a social democrat. And not only did she won pretty big, considering how many candidates there were in the race. It's not like an American thing where there's, two parties. There's lots of parties, but she won a pretty decisive victory and, for her country. But there's a twist. There's a little twist in this. So while a lot of her policies would be familiar to the left wing, with plenty of, we're gonna, climate change and economic justice and all that stuff. That's all still part of the platform. But her stance on immigration, which has become the stance of the Social Democrats in Denmark, is decidedly different than what you'd see in the American left. Let me read to you a little bit. I have an article here from NPR. I'm going to just read you an excerpt from that article about this Denmark election from 2019. Denmark's Social Democrats have tacked hard right on immigration. Working closely with colleagues across the aisle in Parliament, they passed laws aimed at sending or keeping refugees to their home countries rather than integrating them. Their platform includes a Marshall Plan for Africa intended to stem the flow of migration by improving conditions at the source. But Social Democratic Party members have also played a part in headline-grabbing initiatives more commonly associated with hardliners, like a law allowing police to seize jewelry and other assets from refugees, a burqa ban, and a plan to put certain rejected asylum seekers on an island previously used for infectious disease research. Now, they didn't end up doing that island thing, by the way, okay? So the island thing didn't happen. The burqa ban, that's very much a thing. Stealing stuff from refugees when they enter your country, that's very much a thing in Denmark. And they were both championed by social democrats. Now, it's simplifying things to say what I'm about to say. So just keep that in mind. But she's kind of like Bernie Sanders with Trump's position on immigration. Hard as that is to imagine. Now, look, I don't think it's fair necessarily to say, by the way, that they took a hard right on immigration. Because there is a left-wing argument against illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants. Once again, don't care about the terminology. They enter the jobs market, and they drive wages down by virtue of their willingness to work cheap. It's often said by Americans on the left that, immigrants do the jobs that Americans aren't willing to do. That's kind of the defensive line there. Well, look, they're not stealing our jobs. They're doing the jobs that Americans aren't willing to do. But I think the reality may be closer to saying that they do the jobs that Americans aren't willing to do for slave wages. And, it's of a tremendous benefit to many business owners, large business owners, small business owners, even individuals. It's a huge benefit to them to hire undocumented workers who represent a workforce willing to settle for longer hours, lesser pay, and worse working conditions. And it's not like they don't unionize, they don't demand that their rights. They're just happy to not be in fucking Honduras or whatever the fuck, So Bernie Sanders actually does make a more moderate form of this left-wing argument against illegal immigration when he talks about the problem of immigrant exploitation and outsourcing.
Donald Trump tells us every day how much we're supposed to hate and fear the undocumented. But as a businessman, he hired hundreds of undocumented workers to work in his resorts so that he could exploit them. Donald Trump, the fraud, told us that we should worry about the outsourcing of good-paying American jobs, but as a businessman, he manufactured his products in Mexico, in China, in Turkey, and in other low-wage countries.
Bernie has been pretty vocal on the issue of outsourcing for many years. It's hard to find even like one Bernie stump speech where he doesn't at least allude to it once, the problem of outsourcing. He talks about good-paying American jobs being shipped overseas where workers are paid a fraction of what they would be here. And he's right. Plenty of Americans have lost work because their jobs were shipped overseas, or they were just shipped across the southern border because there's no sea between us and Mexico, obviously. At least I don't think there is. Do we get a new sea? Can anyone let me know on that? Plenty of Americans have lost their work for those exact reasons. And, it's not racist to say that. No one even says it's racist to say that. And is that real? That's not in the best interest of American workers to allow this sort of rampant outsourcing to take place. That's in the best interest of mega corporations. I mean, if you're going to say it's in the best interest of American workers, I'd like to know how. Probably the only argument you could really make is, well, it keeps prices low. When we get this, when we build things with, we move a manufacturing job from America where someone's getting paid, $16 an hour or $10 an hour, whatever the fuck you're paid, and we ship it over to Mexico where they're getting $2 an hour, and there's no unions and there's no, obviously some of those savings are passed on to the consumer, so it keeps, costs low. But, I don't really see how it doesn't really matter how low costs are when no one in America can afford shit. I just read an article today that said 1 in 3 Americans, by the time they get their paycheck, they've already spent all of the money from their last paycheck. Like their paycheck literally doesn't take them to their next paycheck. That's 1 in 3. 1 in 3. A full third of the country is living paycheck to paycheck. Just can't even stretch that dollar far enough to get to their next paycheck. So that's not a fucking tenable. That's not a tenable fucking position for this country to be in. If you have I don't know. I believe, anyway, I believe, this is my personal belief. If you have a fucking job, it should pay you enough to live, and it should pay you enough that you have the option of socking a little money away so that you can actually build up a savings. So Bernie makes the case in that clip I showed a little bit earlier that Donald Trump, by hiring undocumented immigrants, not only deprived American citizens of jobs, but he also exploited those immigrants that he hired because, they don't have any bargaining power. They're here illegally. They're working for peanuts, and they're not even in a position to ask for more. They're not in a position to ask for fairer treatment. The only reason that they're here is because there's jobs that they're willing to do for lower pay than any American would do those jobs for. So that is a form of exploitation. You can't have it both ways on this. You can't have it both ways on this. If Trump hiring undocumented immigrants is depriving Americans of jobs and is exploiting that immigrant labor, that means that everyone who does, Trump is not a special case here. Everyone who does that is taking away American jobs and is exploiting immigrant labor, undocumented immigrant labor. If Trump hiring undocumented immigrants was an exploitation of those immigrants, then every company or every individual that hires said immigrants is also guilty of the very same exploitation. So if we take that to its natural conclusion, then undocumented immigrants coming to America to work is an exploitation of them and a detriment to the American citizens, the American workers who would have otherwise gotten those jobs and would have been in the position to bargain for a fairer wage. So even when undocumented immigrants don't end up taking American jobs, what they do is they drive the wages down of American workers in many fields. Now, I have a lot of family members in the construction industry, and they've seen a downturn in the work that they get because increasingly they're competing against undocumented immigrants who work for fucking peanuts. And as a result, they adopt these very hardline anti-immigration stances. It's like, oh, goddamn, that's why they want the wall. That's why they want the wall. And when they bring these grievances forth into the public sphere and say, hey, wages are being driven down across my industry by these undocumented immigrants. They don't say undocumented. They say these illegals, these damn illegals. They're called racist. They're called racist for that. Now, maybe some are racist, but is it racist to not want to compete against workers who in many cases are working for less than the fucking minimum wage? Is it racist to not want to compete with that? Is it racist to say, hey, I have a family to feed, so I don't want to compete against someone who's not even a citizen of this country, who's doing this job for less than it's even legal to pay me? A left-wing populist movement has to be centered around the interest of workers and the working class. It has to be. If it isn't centered around that, then it's just another elitist fucking soiree where, oh, yes, we are so morally superior. And that's not what you want. That doesn't resonate with anybody. That's bullshit. If you want a populist left-wing movement in this country, you have to address the concerns of the working class. And you know, one of the things they're concerned about is immigration. It's not the only thing that they're concerned about. They're also concerned about automation, and there's other factors as well. But one of the principal things they're looking at is, hey, these immigrants coming over stealing these fucking jobs. Now, I think that immigrants stole my gerbs is an oversimplification, but that's not to say that undocumented immigrants do not have an impact on the labor force. I think that, yes, if they weren't here doing those jobs for low wages, then these companies that are hiring them would have no choice but to hire Americans at better wages. And I think that when they do hire these undocumented workers to work for lower wages, it drives wages down. That's my contention. So it's a little bit more complicated than they done stole their gerbs, okay? So don't fucking reduce it down to that. Don't be too reductionist with it. When working class people say they don't want to compete against undocumented immigrants, the left should listen. That's the point here. Because in Denmark, the Social Democrats did exactly that, and they won. So listen, what am I advocating here? Am I advocating that we start doing the Denmark policies, that we start, we got to ban the burqa. Got to ban the burqa. That's anti-free speech. The government shouldn't be telling people what clothes they can wear. Fuck that. That's not on the table for me. Should we start seizing the assets of refugees? Well, in this country, we have, we actually do that to our own citizens. So whatever. They have asset forfeiture laws here. Where, if you get pulled over by the cops and you got something like, oh, you got $1,000 on you. Well, we think that's drug money, so we're taking it. We don't even need evidence that it's drug money. We just decided it is. It's ours now. That's a legit thing here in America. So fuck that, and fuck taking it from refugees too. I don't support the Denmark policies. I'm not here to advocate for the policies that Denmark has enacted. What I am here to advocate for is addressing the issue the way they have. Not in the way that they have necessarily, but addressing the issue because obviously it's a winning strategy. It worked there. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work here, but they've done it in this very uncompassionate, right-wing sort of way, where it's just like, God damn it, fuck these immigrants. I don't think that's the tack that needs to be taken here. We're not the same as Denmark in those regards. But I do think that there has to be a more substantive way of addressing this problem other than just telling these workers, hey, you're wrong. No. Those the undocumented immigrants, they're not a problem for you. They're not a problem. We're not going to listen to you. We know better because we're the elites. We're the upper crust. We know what's what. It's easy for us to fucking pronounce, that you're a racist or something because we're here in our fucking ivory tower where none of this shit even touches us. So we're just dismissing your concerns. That's not the way to be. That's not how you win over fucking people. That's not how you win hearts and minds. That's not how you convince anybody. So I don't think the American left needs to adopt the frankly repugnant and cruel policies of Denmark. But I do think that the American left, they need to fucking address this issue. So here's what I think. I think that we need to start levying swift and brutal punitive measures against companies who outsource American jobs. That's the first thing. We need to hit these companies with such massive fines and restrictions and tariffs and whatever else we got in the arsenal. We need to make it to where it's no longer cheaper for these companies to ship jobs overseas. We need to make it where it's not financially viable for them to do that. We need to make it where, hey, yeah, you're better off staying here and paying American workers. Because if you try to move a factory overseas that used to be here, you ain't going to like the fucking results. And, of course, the business class, totally against that stuff. But, the whole point of something like a social democrat party is taking on those fucking powerful interests. I also think we need to enforce swift and brutal punitive measures against companies or individuals that hire undocumented workers to work for them here on American soil. You know, if you exploit a desperate immigrant to save a buck, you know, the immigrant isn't the bad guy in that situation. You are. If you hire an undocumented immigrant instead of an American citizen, you're not going to save money. You're going to pay through the nose when you're caught. And you won't be hiring, maybe you won't be hiring anyone anymore because you might just find yourself out of fucking business. So then the problem becomes, well, if we get rid of this source of cheap labor, you know, that's going to cause prices to rise. You know, that's why, in my opinion, we need to raise American wages. You know, we need that $15 an hour minimum wage that Bernie Sanders has been out there championing. Now, one thing that he doesn't do that I would do, or that I would encourage, you know, like-minded people to advocate for, is don't just raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Tie that bitch to inflation. Have that fight now so that we don't have to keep doing this. Because, you know, $15 an hour minimum wage might sound fucking great now, but then the dollar continues to inflate. And, you know, the next thing we know, $15 an hour ain't shit. So tie it to inflation. Make the wage fair, make the wage a living wage, and then tie it to inflation or tie it to cost of living or tie it to some factor that ensures that it will keep going up in perpetuity to maintain its value throughout the years. And if you don't do that, then you're just going to be having this fight again in another decade or two. I also think we need a far more robust social safety net so that people are not forced to pay out of pocket for things like health care, you know, prescription drugs, child care. You know, I think we need a very robust welfare system that ensures that everyone has access to food, clothing, housing, and all those things that are an absolute necessity for a human being. Because why even have a society if we can't provide those things? Now, you know, I know a lot of people, when they hear that, they start saying the words nanny state. You know, well, I don't see anything wrong. I'll be honest with you. I don't see anything wrong with a nanny state if that's what it takes to ensure that every single American citizen has food, clothing, shelter, and other basic human necessities. And I know the argument there is that people aren't going to work if all of that's provided for them. You know, that's the conservative counterpoint. Oh, the people aren't going to work. It's just going to make people lazy. You know, and I let me just say that. I think they're going to work. I think they will. Because most people are not going to want to live in government housing. They're going to want a nice house. Most people are not going to want to be on fucking food stamps. They're going to want to go to the grocery store and buy whatever the hell they fucking want. You know, people are ambitious. People want nice things. They don't want some bare minimum do nothing existence where, like, okay, technically you got a little fucking box you can live in and you got some fucking, here's your government cheese. You know, they don't want that. It's good to have that as a bare minimum so that you know no matter how far you fall or how fucking badly you start out, there's always, hey, I'm not going to be out on the street. There's going to be a place for me. It's good to have that as the, like, what we're talking about is taking the bare minimum, like the worst. Hey, you know, instead of living in a tent city and wondering where your next meal is going to come from and begging on the street, you're going to have a little box. You know, a little small apartment or something, and you're going to have, you know, some government issued shit. And it's going to fucking suck. It's going to be a shitty existence, but it's better than living on the street, and it's better than eating fucking, you know, baked beans near a garbage fire or whatever the fuck. Or, you know, raiding the McDonald's dumpster. But people in America, they want things, you know, they want nice things. We're a consumer fucking culture. You know, people want a big house. They want a nice car. They want a big screen TV. They want the latest video game system. They want all the bells and whistles that you need a fucking job to afford. So I don't buy into this idea that if we raise the bare minimum standard of living, that somehow that's just going to make people totally complacent and they're just going to surrender to that and just be like, I will eke out a fucking miserable existence, you know, living on the government dole. I don't think most people are going to do that. Will there be some Probably, but those people already exist. And it's not going to be the majority. It's not even going to be close. It's going to be a tiny sliver of people. So I don't know. I don't think that. I just don't want people huddle around garbage fires in tent cities, dying of preventable illness and stuff like that. That's where I'm at. I don't think that should exist. And really, I'll just be frank with you. To my way of thinking, no one can really describe themselves as a patriot if they're willing to accept that, some people are going to live in tent cities. If you're willing to look at your fellow Americans, living in a tent under an overpass, then you're not a fucking patriot in my mind. No one can claim to be a patriot if they're willing to let their fellow citizens die of preventable disease. If you don't give a fuck about Americans, then how do you expect me to believe you give a fuck about America? Right? Right. And why are we letting people die of preventable illness in the first place? Is it freedom? Is it liberty? No, it's to protect healthcare profits. It's to protect, the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical industry. Like, why is that a priority? It's a priority to make sure those guys get rich? No. The reason that we have a pharmaceutical industry is because we need drugs. We need prescription drugs to treat illnesses. It doesn't exist so that those companies can make a profit. That's not why we invented the fucking industry, okay? But that seems to be their idea of why they exist. They don't view themselves as we exist to help people and treat illness. They view themselves as we exist to make massive fucking record-breaking profits and hoard it all for ourselves and, nickel and dime people to death, literally to death. No one can claim to be a patriot if they backstab American workers by outsourcing jobs and by allowing unmitigated waves of foreign labor to flood the U.S. job market. That's the one that some of the liberals don't want to fucking hear. But if you're willing to say, hey, I think that these Mexican nationals deserve this job more than the American factory worker who just had his job stripped away from him. I think that, these undocumented laborers who are coming here and working for less than minimum wage are, that they deserve that job more than an American working a, fair wage. You're just not a fucking patriot at that point. You're just not. You can't be. Because you don't give a fuck about your fellow fucking citizens. So just own up to it and say, yeah, fuck America. Fuck America, fuck patriotism, whatever. And that's a perfectly valid position. I don't have any problem with people not being patriotic. But just don't tell me you are if you fucking despise your fellow Americans. You can't fucking say out of one side of your mouth, oh yeah, God bless America. But then out of the other side, fuck them pieces of shit. Fuck every piece of shit I see. Can't do it. You can, you're just a piece of shit. That's fine. Look, I think we need to reform our immigration system to ensure that those who do wish to immigrate to America can do so easily. Easily. It shouldn't be hard. If you want to become an American citizen, I think it should be the easiest goddamn thing in the world. As long as you're not, hey, you're a fucking 15-time, murderer and rapist. Okay, obviously that guy, don't let him in. But, upstanding fucking person willing to work, yeah, let him in. Let him in. But let him come in and let him compete as a fucking full-fledged American citizen who's not able to then come in and undercut American labor as an undocumented immigrant is. Because if you're an undocumented immigrant, you're constantly scared of being deported. So your boss has perpetually got that over you. You're trying to unionize? Oh, bullshit. Go back to Mexico. Go back to Mexico. Oh, we don't have to pay you the minimum wage. You're not even here legally. You're not even here. As far as the records are concerned, you don't even exist. They can't compete on that level. They can't compete on that level. They got to become full-fledged American citizens and compete on a level fucking playing field. So that's how it should be done. As far as undocumented immigrants who have already been here for a number of years and have established lives, I see no problem. Make them citizens. Quit fucking making them live in this twilight zone of fucking uncertainty. Stop allowing them to be used as a political bargaining chip. You know, like Trump, oh, well, I'll let them be citizens, but you got to give me this, this, and this. It's like, no. No. These are people. They're not fucking bargaining chips. They've been here forever. They're established here. Let them stay. Let them be American citizens. That should be that. But, we're not going to stop the flow of illegal immigration into this country by building some easily thwarted fucking wall. Okay? We're not going to... The way you're going to do it is you're going to make it clear there is no work here for those who immigrate illegally. And we're going to do that by fixing our overly complicated legal immigration system, which is a nightmare. And we're going to penalize businesses and individuals who hire undocumented immigrants. And that's what I think needs to be done. I think Bernie Sanders is actually part of the way there already. I think he may be further in that direction than I think he is. But he's just scared to spell it out because he doesn't want to be labeled with the various aspersions that'll be cast his way by these like neoliberal globalists who just want to put big business over workers and use the racism accusation as a shield. Like, oh no, you can't get me. Because if you fucking dare stand up for workers in this situation, we'll call you a racist. You just hate Mexicans. No one... Well, I'm not going to say no one hates Mexicans. But, most people don't fucking hate Mexicans. And most people don't have a problem with legal immigration. I think that, a lot of people don't understand how broken the legal immigration system is and how arbitrary it is. So I think we do need to make that a lot easier. But we need to make it to where when these people come here searching for economic opportunity, which is a good thing. It's a great thing that we live in a country that offers that. But when they come here looking for that, it has to be clear you're going to go and compete on a level playing field. You're not going to go and undercut, other citizens, because at that point they are citizens. We can't have this black market of illegal cheap labor that Americans are then expected to compete with. They can't do it. They shouldn't have to. It's outrageous to just think that they should, and it's doubly outrageous to call them racist if they don't want to. So what I'm advocating for here is an ethical, compassionate, multi-tiered approach to immigration that I would like to see more leftists speaking out in support of, because it doesn't make sense to be an American working class movement if you're not going to stand up for the American working class. So here I am 24 hours after I recorded that video, and in that intervening 24 hours, just like lightning to a lightning rod, somehow, through sheer circumstance, I found this Bernie Sanders clip. Actually, it was a clip Steven Crowder used. And for, just somehow, randomly, I clicked on a Steven Crowder video, which I normally do not do. And I just went to a random point in the video, and Bernie happened to be talking about immigration, and he, like, lo and behold, was saying exactly what I just said to you, basically, word for word. Well, no, not word for word. That'd be ridiculous. But the concept is exactly the same. And this is only from 2015. So I'm not sure if Bernie has changed his position on this, or if Bernie has simply sort of started downplaying this position. But I think he needs to be more upfront with this. I think that, this is an argument that needs to be made. And this is an argument that's going to resonate with a lot of working class people. But anyway, here it is. This is Bernie, 2015, talking to Vox and saying a lot of what I just said in this video.
Sharply increasing
open borders.
Foreign aid.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course. I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would,
Anybody
it
can,
would make a
excuse
lot
me,
of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
and it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe in a nation state, or in a country called the United States, or UK, or Denmark, or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people. What right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that. I think we have to raise wages in this country. I think we have to do everything that we can to create the millions of jobs. You know what youth unemployment in the United States of America today? If you're white, a white kid, high school graduate, 33%, a Hispanic, 36%, African American, 51%. You think we should open the borders and bring in a lot of low-wage workers? Or do you think maybe we should try to get jobs for those kids? So I think from a moral responsibility, we've got to work with the rest of the industrialized world to address the problems of international poverty, but you don't do that by making people in this country even poorer.
Anyway, I'm just rambling to hear myself talk at this point. Let me wrap it up. I'm the Amazing Atheist. Peace the fuck out. Do all the cool shit that I like you to do, you know, thumbs up. Or, hey, fuck it. If you hated it, thumbs down. Boo, you suck, TJ. Do that if you want. Subscribe. I have a Patreon, the Pessimist Productions Patreon. You can support that. There's lots of stuff you can do. You know all the shit. You got to hit the stupid alert bell. And I think there's like 2 alert bells now. You got to fucking, I don't know, just, all the shit to do. There's a bunch of links below. Follow me on all that social media and all that bullshit. That's it. We're good.